Going evil backwards.
Is that one? Mm.
It's been cool. Got a lot of painting done this weekend, which I haven't really had like
That's
a heavy
awesome.
painting day in a while.
I've just been insanely busy. Like I haven't gotten anything done besides trying to get stuff picked up around here and getting things ready to leave.
Makes sense. Man, I'm so happy since I figured out how to edit the Twitch layout, and so I didn't have to. So I cut that other window that it was giving me out, so I can see more of the chat, which is a huge help.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's everywhere. Oh, this one. Cool, 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 cool. I think that's everything. That's good. All right.
I
Yeah.
assume I'll close out the episode.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. See how bad I can mess up the intro without a script.
I believe in you. I believe in you. I do really like that background that you have now. I know that you're using it because of Revan, and it starts to look
Yeah.
weird when you move your head. But when you're just perfectly sitting there, it just gives like Revan's background smoke to you, and it looks really slick. Where sometimes like the comic book background stuff, it just like I
Yeah.
don't know, it feels really
It detracts. It
abrupt.
detracts a lot.
Well, it's like a really
Yeah.
abrupt transition sometimes from where your head and headphones end to suddenly being a comic strip, but like something about the coloration of the smoke just like has a really natural feel, and it actually just feels like it could be the like background behind you, that you just
The
have
background.
this,
Yeah,
cool
especially
misty.
with all the vape
Yeah,
stuff too.
yeah,
You
you're
know,
literally.
it's immersive.
I
Oh
did
man.
as a person who's really only vaped when I vaped like with someone that I was out on a date with or something. I
Hmm.
watched the vaping documentary about the company
Yeah.
that blew up. Did you watch that one? I forget what it was
I
called.
haven't seen it yet. I've been meaning to, but it's about the whole God, oh, what were they called?
They made the Jewel, but I'm trying to remember what the
Yeah.
company was. Um, but I thought it was a really interesting conversation, right? Where it was obvious, it was very clear that the people who started the company had this very distinct goal of, we want to make something that's healthier than combustion cigarettes for the
Yeah, but
people who
money.
are addicted to the situation. But then like how just the natural capitalism corrupts the process.
Hmm.
um
And they just start going cheaper because big tobacco buys them out, and
yeah.
it's good. I think whenever anybody ever asks me about like vaping versus cigarettes, like what sold me on it is like I used to run a lot, and when I switched to vaping over cigarettes, I was like, I can actually breathe when I run now. This is what it feels like to run like better than what I normally do. Like, I wouldn't say run like a normal person because still putting a foreign substance in your lungs, but and I'll never dispute that. Anybody who's like, oh,
Oh
everybody who
yeah,
vapes
it's
it says,
still
oh, it's not bad for you. It's like it's still shit for you, but it's like
Yeah, it's still
it's
it's still
what,
certainly. I mean, you're still just putting a drug in your body, right? Like alcohol
yeah.
is not healthy for you. Sugar is not healthy for you. That's clear and obvious. But I found it really interesting when it hit the part in the documentary where a bunch of people like ended up in the hospitals and like their lungs were
Mm-hmm.
collapsing. And obviously, like I was just shocked while I was like, man, holy shit, I did not expect it to be this bad. And they were like, but what actually caused this was people was putting this fucking oil in that looked like THC
Mm-hmm.
oil and selling that to these kids, and that's what most likely actually caused this like sudden lung collapse. Um,
Yes.
and I was like, and then I was like, of course, you're never gonna fix that situation. But it's crazy when you're just like, oh, this product is such high demand that they can't make the refills, the capsules or whatever fast enough, and so people are
Yeah.
refilling them with random shit. But
Well,
probably enough.
that was the crazy thing. People would be like, "Oh, have you ever had it blow up on you or anything like that?" I'm like, "No, because I'm not an idiot, and I don't buy I buy the expensive stuff because I'm not trying to get my leg blown up in my pocket." I had a buddy who actually had that happen to him. He had it in his pocket and it blew up while he was driving. And I was
Damn,
like, "It's because you bought a $50 thing when you should have spent 150 on it." Like it's the same thing. Like
get what you
money
pay for.
talks, money quality. Yeah.
All right, well, should we do this
And when
thing?
you're dealing with batteries like this, it's like, yeah, I'm good. Let's
Okay.
do it. There was no delay there. I just wanted to finish my
Yeah,
my
yeah.
thought because I'm weird and
You know me, I'm trying to
I'm
keep things
ready.
on pace.
You know me, I'm trying to take things off
Yeah,
pace.
I know. Well, that's the balancing act, right?
There. All right.
Okay.
Hit those buttons.
Okay, we are live. Do you want me to intro?
Yeah, go ahead and hit the button.
Hitting the button.
My young apprentice, stretch out with your feeling soul. I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
Welcome to Rogue Support, your Star Wars Shatterpoint podcast. We're your hosts, Dyzard and Omnus. Omnus, how are you doing this weekend?
Oh, I am doing well. It does feel like it's been a million years since you and I did this because of me traveling
Truth.
to Denmark. But it was cool. Did get to talk some Shatterpoint while I was over there, even though it was an MCP event. I will admit, I think most of the Shatterpoint conversations I was in happened because I walked over to talk to Amon and Jesse and just realized that there was a hello there Shatterpoint chat going on. Um, and I think when I did talk to people and they were listeners, I'm not sure anyone like specifically like called out like Rogue Support versus Omnus Protocol or something like that. I did run into somebody who was like, "I want to buy you a beer," and I thought they were going to like talk about Omnus Protocol or Rogue Support, and they were literally just talking about Blight Makes Right. They were literally talking about the old shit. They hadn't listened to anything that I've done in like
That's
the last
awesome.
like 7 years. They just appreciated the old stuff, the classics. But it was cool. I mean, I will always shout out. I haven't done it in 9 years, right? And so going back to that setting was a big reminder of just how special the international events are, and just what it's like talking with listeners and stuff, from literally like, oh, now I'm talking to Finns, now I'm talking to Swedes, now I'm talking to people from London, now I like, and you're just talking to people from all over the place, and it's just nuts. It's a really special thing, and I would strongly encourage anyone who, especially if you're from the US or Canada and you have the chance to go do something over in Europe, that would be a large event. I would say do it. It's really special. So happy to be back.
Awesome.
Finally settled in. Finally have the jet lag gone, and I'm sleeping normal hours again. And excited to talk some Shatterpoint.
Awesome. Been a busy week for me. I got my orders finally and working my way out of the military, so it's been very very busy, as well as trying to work games and do this whole Galactic Republic challenge that we put upon ourselves,
Nice.
which has been interesting. It's been
So you're
interesting.
in that
Uh,
transition from Imperial pilot to Han Solo smuggler. That's about where you're at right now.
yeah, I'd say so. I'd say
Okay.
that's a pretty good representation. As I think the RV also helps with that because the RV is like the Millennium Falcon, where it's just this beat up thing, but it works and it does what we need it to do.
What
So
was
the
the name
RV
of
is our
the
Millennial
what was the
Falcon.
name of the ship in Spaceballs? What was Lone Star's ship? I know it was like a Winnebago, but
And I haven't seen Spaceballs in years.
okay. Like you talk. I'm gonna
I
look it
really
up
don't
real quick.
remember. I'm curious now. But basically, yeah, I've been
Good
playing.
television. Good.
I've been playing this Anakin Cad Bane list for the challenge, and it's been working really well. I really enjoy it. For those of you that are interested in trying it, it's Anakin, Rex, Arf, and then Cad, Ara or Django, preferably Django, but I wanted to play Ara more, so I put her in there. But Django just is Django. And then the bounty hunters, and it's actually working really well. And Anakin always has force to double tap if he needs it, and I've been actually really enjoying the list, and it's a good time.
Nice. And it was just called the Eagle 5 Winnebago. So if you have
The
the
Eagle 5
opportunity to
Winnebago.
work in like an Eagle 5 or 5 Eagles or something somewhere on your RV, I think that would be pretty sweet.
Let's get 5 stickers of Eagles. It'll be
Yeah,
fun.
5 Falcons.
uh, Absolutely. But yeah, that's been about my last 2 to 3 weeks, however long it's been. Just getting games in where I can and working my way out of the military. So
Well,
you had a
congratulations.
fun travel, and I'm about to have a fun travel over to the West Coast. So
Bit of a road
it's
trip.
gonna be a fun drive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been doing a mixture of painting because obviously there's the core set for MCP that came out. But I'm trying to gear up for our GR challenge, and so I'd always been a little annoyed with my Anakin paint job. It was just,
Hmm.
when you're experimenting with just like 3 different shades of brown or like 4 different shades of brown when you like factor in his belt and I was just never quite happy or like and he's like brown hair, brown tabards, like it was just so much
It's
brown.
brown, brown, brown.
Yeah, it's literally just like shades and shades of brown. Call his album 50 Shades of Brown. Um, but I was never quite happy with how my Anakin looked. And so that's been one of my like, it's always I get a little bit more amped up to play a list when I'm like kind of excited to put the physical model on the table. And because Anakin was high on my list of things that I wanted to try with GR, because obviously there's some things that I
Hmm.
feel like everybody's been doing. Where I always felt like Anakin got moved past really quickly, and I would like to visit it. And I think he still has like really insane damage trees. Like even his non-murder tree is like a shit ton of pushes. Like it's still a
Yeah.
really solid tree. Um, and so yeah, he's high on my list to test, and then I'm trying to finish up my ARFs. And right now they're just kind of like glossy black, and I have the bases done, and I have red eyes, and I'm trying to figure out where else do I want to work in red on those models. I'm trying to get them finished up for to go with Anakin. And then I'm figuring out what all I'm going to test as options because I'm not going to do the bounty hunter. Not going to do the CAD side that you're doing, but I'm going to try some other things. It may still have some Mandalorians a little bit, but the goal in general is to be playing at least 4 out of 6 of the character cards essentially in the roster would be GR, and then I feel like it qualifies as a GR list. Um, doesn't have to be all 6 things count as Galactic Republic because I think if you trap yourself that much, that's where you can run into some problems. But I'm excited to see how it goes. I think this will be fun. Win or lose, I think it'll be an interesting episode in 2 weeks.
Agreed. And then let's go ahead. We have a new patron, Chris. Thank you for becoming a patron. And if anybody else would like to become a patron and support the show, the link will be in the description. And thank you to all of our other patrons for supporting us.
Awesome. Welcome aboard, Chris. You are a delightful scoundrel. And you're my favorite right now. Don't tell everybody else. Let's keep this between us. But Chris, our names both start CH, just like special bond is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. All right, let's move into the Chamber of Judgment. And you had something special for this one. What do we talk about here?
So I wanted to talk about multi attacks because obviously we're both contemplating some Anakin lists, And Aura Singh has been a big conversation lately, and obviously, like, she's fucking 5 squad points, right? And I feel like a fair amount of that is tied up in the fact that she can make multiple attacks. Like, it's not guaranteed. You have to, kind of time things correctly. But in general, the multi attack, and I just mean that in like anytime a character will make more than one attack during their activation. And so I think Aura and
Mhm.
Anakin are the best example. I feel like there's one I'm forgetting. I feel like there's another character um, that can do it. I know there's characters like Django who can do the like not so fast, which is like a pseudo attack, and then I guess you could also count like Grievous and Kalani who can like create an attack
Yeah.
from another model. I think that still qualifies. But obviously, this is something that you want to be conscientious of, and um, and I can understand why AMG doesn't want everybody making 2 attacks. Like it changes the game pretty dramatically when you can. But how do you feel about the execution of these abilities so far? Is it good enough? Is it like too expensive on Anakin? Is it does it weigh too heavily on Aura Singh? How are you feeling about it so far?
So what I think is, I think first of all, I think the Anakin and Aura is the best examples here. I can't think of there's any other ones that are like specifically like making two like from the same character. Because Anakin is two against the same target, and Aura is one against one, and then 5 die against another. And I personally, I almost kind of feel like Aura's is more powerful, which is funny because it's cheaper. And the reason why I say this is R's range. The fact that she's doing it at range 5 max is great because she can use her big hit to go off somebody that she needs to take out that has more health, and then go ahead and pivot over to I'm going to do 2 damage with a 5 dice. And it really works out great that way. You hit it really nail on the head, or head on the nail, whatever it is.
I hit all the nails
With
and
the
all the
fact that
heads. Just bam, 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 bam.
I I don't want too much of this in the game because it would be very oppressive, and with how Shatterpoint is, I you could probably end up putting every single double attack character in a list, and then that would just be insanely oppressive. Having it to where I have Anakin and Aura in my list right now, having 2 characters that could pop off 2 attacks has been great. It's very much I'm gonna kill somebody this turn, or I'm gonna severely hurt you. Um, and I love it. I think it's super strong. I think Anakin's being 2 costs is fair. Aura's being 1 cost, I think is fair because the fact the second attack is only 5 dice, and she doesn't get the bonus for extra dice on it. It's still neat because she can go, I'm gonna go heavy on this dude, and then I'm gonna go 5 dice, hope for 2 to 3 damage to take somebody out with plink damage. Great ability. I don't think it's crazy. I think it's at a great spot right now. I hope we don't see too much of it though. It's one of those ones that if we see too much of it, it can get out of hand real quick.
It is kind of interesting that even right now, like, I know a lot of people complain about the Vader list, right? But you think about in the Vader list, obviously deep down, the supports can always make 2 attacks, right? Their attacks aren't always as
Yeah.
good, but man, that's a lot when we're talking about the Magna Guard. Like looking back on the Magna Guard, I'm kind of like, should the Magna Guard have been like a solo support unit? Like, like if you look at their stat card, right? Like there's their actual card, if you like compare it to say like Fifth Brother, right? And you're looking at like the overall amount of health, the overall amount of defenses, the crits for successes, right? Like deep down, these cards don't actually look that different. And so this could have been a character that maybe shouldn't be making 2 attacks. Like Magna Guard, I know we're complaining about Vader, but Magna Guard are still probably the best thing in the game when they're put in a list that has enough separatist synergy. Um, but then when you've got like Grievous in there too, who's a character who can make multiple attacks, right? Because he can make an attack and then he can make a droid make an attack. And then you could potentially have both Kraken and Kalani in the list, right? Like that is an
Hmm.
absolutely possible and common thing to see. And then both Kraken and Kalani can generate their attack plus an attack. I forget what the power is called, um, but and then supports like that's a list that's making, through one cycle of the deck, right, can easily end up making something like 12 or 13 attacks. That's
Mhm.
that's a fuck of a lot. Like, and I think maybe that's one of the things that can make that list feel so oppressive, and kind of a lesson that we learned from MCP, right? Because there was a point in MCP when people were trying to win as many games as possible, like without basically rolling offense dice, right? It was all about what can you do, and like a comparison to Shatterpoint, it would be the stuff like force push
Yeah.
and using abilities like that to win games as much as possible. And then over time, we've kind of realized that like that can work to your disadvantage, because defense dice can't really like spike into an advantage, right? But if you roll enough attack rolls, those can just spike into a big advantage. And when you're just making that many different attacks, you're bound to just have some impact the game in a heavy way. And so
Yeah.
there's just a strategy to like roll more attacks, the more likely that you're going to have a game-changing effect. I'm not sure exactly where
Well,
I'm going with
it's like,
that, but you see what I'm kind of
well,
saying.
I think
Like,
where you're going at with this is the fact that we're used to games providing opportunities to fix dice, whether that be rerolls or something along those ways. Shatterpoint at this moment only has two characters that provide rerolls, being Mace and Cody. One
yeah,
of which
offensive rerolls.
almost never sees the table. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like you look at this and, well, if I don't have rerolls, what is another way that I can create consistency in my dice? And that's just a quantity of attacks
Make more. Yeah. Well, and
or more dice with Vader.
well, and to a certain extent, like deep down, both of our favorite character at the moment is probably Mother. And the biggest thing is like she's probably like through one order deck cycle, she's making two,
Yeah.
3, 4 attacks. Like that shit adds up. And
It is
so
quality attacks. Like the fact that she could do 4 damage on your turn, like almost guaranteed, is insane.
yep.
Like,
And so
like
maybe,
hello.
I mean, I didn't think about this before I brought up this topic, but maybe this is a thing that like we should to a certain extent um be abusing, right? Like this might actually be like the biggest kind of gap in the system, so to speak, that like playing lists that are just going to give you more attacks, and where can you work in more attacks, and like as long as those attacks are something impactful, right? Like obviously if Mother wasn't rolling, uh expertise into crits, right, and having pushes early in her tree, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. um but deep down, I think there's just a big value in making multiple attacks, and I have a feeling down the road, even with the stuff that we have now, I have a feeling that you almost cannot make that much more of it, right? Like it's already really good.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I agree completely with that. Then you got Shiny Agron in the chat saying
that's a
she gives like 4 to
Pokemon.
5 heals per cycle.
The shiny Aggron's actually really cool looking. It's basically like Sith colors, so it's practically like a Sith Pokemon. It's like black, red, and steel. It's pretty sweet. So it's shit in Pokemon
The
Go because
most
they made the
consistent
Aggron suck.
damage
But
you can do is handmade coordinated fire with Padme Cudbane. They do 4 damage without having to roll dice. Yeah, that seems real dirty. I'll be completely honest. I have not played the Handmaidens, and I have no intention to. And I actually haven't ran into the Handmaidens either. They're just not my style. But that sounds really cool. My question though
Cadme, I
is,
like Cadme. That's
Cadme's
sweet.
realistic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's sweet.
I like the idea of it.
Yeah.
My question though, and Agron, you could probably answer this as we get to it, but my question to you is it like how's the hand maiden thing work? They get to make an attack, or like is that what it is? Do you remember what it is?
I mean, it's just. I mean, they do the whole Padme box just provides a lot of internal synergy. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
I And
Fair
then
enough.
yeah, you've got some really good synergy there. I have not played with the handmaidens yet either. They are a box I'm planning to pick up, even if it ends up just being for my Sabe, because she still looks really
Yeah.
good. But I've been trying to hold myself to like get stuff painted, get games in with it, and not just jump to the next thing. But um, yeah, they look solid, and I mean I think especially like in a premiere, obviously we're having posing the big question of like how good is Galactic Republic right now, but they it seems like a solid box if you want to play them.
Yeah. I think they're cool, but they're just again they're just not me. Padme just says when a handmaiden makes an attack, she coordinate fires 2 damage. Arcane and bounty hunters can spend a force, be a handmaiden for. Okay, that is pretty dirty. Like, all right, I like it.
There's
Um,
lots of
I
auto
just can't.
damage.
Yeah, I love Cad, but I can't Padme. I like okay, so like if you listened before, Omnus's distaste for Cad is my distaste for Padme.
Really, you have that much
Yeah,
distaste for Padme?
I don't care for Padme as a character. Like she could just not exist.
Hmm.
I'd be okay with it.
I mean, of all of the weird characters that are in Star Wars,
Yeah.
Padme does not strike me as
I have no
weird.
reason. Like
Yeah, okay,
I,
it's
I have
just
no
the
reason for
logical
it either. I
distaste.
just don't I just yeah, I just don't care for her character. That's all it is. It's I don't know. It's just what it is.
We should totally in the Discord do like our top 5 most disliked characters from canon Star Wars.
I'm down.
I'm pretty sure my top 2, I mean, Jar Jar's got to be in the top 5, right? Like that's like a hard, it's almost like you have to give that one a pass. But Cad Bane and C3PO are both in my top 5 for sure. But to figure out the other ones, that would be a question.
3PO I could understand. Um Jar Jar, yes. Except for like if Darth Jar Jar was actually canon, I'd be
No.
totally down with it. I don't even fucking care.
I
Like
think
I
Darth Jar Jar, like this whole concept of bringing such a shitty character into the awesome dark side, does not make things better. Don't taint my cool
it makes it
Sithness
amazing.
with Jar Jarness. You. Oh, by the way, I
Um
was gonna tell you. So while we're in the middle of this, we're like, you want a tangent, enjoy chaos. I want to keep things on track and organized. I did get comments at the WTC that people said that one of their favorite parts of Rogue Support is me trying to nerd wrangle you and failing. Is kind of like the glory of the show. I don't know how true that is or not, but that was the general impression that I got.
well, I'm for it. I have a hamster brain where I just can't stay focused on one thing for too long. That's just how it be. Oh man. All right. I guess we can move on to the main topic of the episode, and you wanted to discuss WTC Shatterpoint.
Yeah, so I didn't want to spoil it in the name of the episode, which is why I was like I was trying to, because I didn't want to just be like Shatterpoint WTC, because that like kind of spoils. You're not gonna you're gonna know what we're talking about before you get there. And then I was like thinking like future of Shatterpoint, but then I was like that's too vague. And then I was like, what about I have foreseen it as kind
Mm-hmm.
of like a
I
precursor
like it.
to Shatterpoint Future. But obviously, I was over. We were doing the WTC format, which was basically the exact same format that was used for War Machine, with like some slight variations on like how do you restrict the list for each person. And one of the first things, like when we started talking about it, and like shout out, I believe it was Amon, myself, and Gil were kind of just like sitting chatting. I can't remember if Jesse was there. I think it was Amon and I and Gil. And we were just like, it'd be really cool if Shatterpoint had it next year. And so we started like immediately talking about some of the, like, how would it work, right? And one of the first
Mm-hmm.
things that we were discussing, because when you have these 5-player teams, right? I'm not going to go through how you do the format, but basically one team kind of gets to choose 3 matchups, and then um, the other team gets to choose 3 out of 5 of the tables. And that just seems hugely more interesting for Shatterpoint, right? Because the difference between one table and Shatterpoint can be so massively different, just with like where the elevation and stuff is, and like how much elevation, where ingress points and stuff are. Choosing table, like when you have 5 options, right? And like especially if you've designed a list that either like will massively take advantage of there being less terrain, or a list that can like really take advantage of there being a lot of terrain, and how that would work on the pairing process, where you're just like, oh, I'm playing a lot of like jetpacks and stuff. I want to try to trap a list that doesn't have that much jumps into a more terrain intensive table. Could just
Hmm.
be really interesting. Like everything else aside, that seems super interesting to me. Now, obviously, I think you could just do it like, obviously we don't know exactly how many characters there would be next year. Um, but you could just restrict primaries, right? You can just be like, no duplicate primaries on the team, right? And so even right now, you're like, okay, there can be a Vader Grievous player, right? But then everybody else has to play something else, right? And like, sure, you could end up with
Okay,
multiple
so
Magna
here's
Guards,
a
multiple Mandos. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I got a wrench for your cogs here.
Okay.
Um, what if so you say no crossing primaries, but every team has to represent every era that's available. So you can't just say like, oh, we're all like Clone Wars people, and that way you're forcing some spread into it.
I think that would probably be fine. I mean, we would have to depend on like what things are looking like there. But what you don't want to
Hmm.
do is you don't want to add restrictions that actually make it so less things would get played, right? And so if you end up where there's a
Yeah,
particular era going into it where you're like, oh, well, the only thing from this era that's good is this, then you're just saying one player has to
they have
play X,
everybody
right?
with has to play one player. One player is playing Galactic Republic or Galactic Empire Vader.
Right. It's just like
Oh
if
man,
there's a time, if there is an era that would be out and you add that restriction, you just got to be careful. You want restrictions that create diversity in the team. You don't want to add
yeah,
restrictions that make it so the teams seem more similar. Right?
fair
So
enough.
you want to strike those two balances. But so just like you and I have not really talked about this before this moment. Um would this is this
Yeah,
the sort of thing that would excite you? Would you be like, I want to go? I mean, I could pitch you on Copenhagen anyway. Like this is actually a great place for a
that's fair.
WTC. So I could pitch you on that. But everything else aside, if you were like, okay, travel is reasonable, like it's a time period that would work. How what would you think about a team format like this? Would this be a thing that you'd be excited about?
I think I love the whole WTC idea. For MC for any game really, for any game that can support it. I guess I should rephrase that. And I do think a year from now, Shatterpoint could easily support that. Because if you think about the release schedule for Shatterpoint, it's been 2 boxes a month of full squads. And even if they stick with just that bare minimum, come September of next year, that's 18 boxes. That's more on top of what we have already, which is I don't know how many. I don't even know how many boxes we have now, but like I think that you could easily pull it off next year, especially with not crossing primaries. I think it'd be limited. It won't feel as free because you're gonna have some really tight decisions to make. But just in general, again, like I love the idea of a team format because it adding a new element that you don't normally have with the whole pairing process, and then using your team to devise what you guys think is the best list to combat in this format. I love the brain puzzles that happen with it, and I love like the interactions. I played in a 3-man MCP tournament, team tournament at Nova. One of the most fun like con tournaments I've been in, or just was one of the most fun tournaments I've been in. I really would love to be a part of more team tournaments in general, and I want more. I got the itch, so yeah, I'm 100% for it.
I mean, it's weird because Shatterpoint has not been out that long. And I think at the point of, say, like when MCP was out, I don't think you could have really done a functional WTC right away for MCP. It just would not have
Yeah,
worked. There were too many things that would not even going to go into why it just wouldn't have worked. I'm not sure it wouldn't work for Shatterpoint right now. Right? Sure, there's probably not going to be that much difference between the teams, but because of the pairing process, right? Like it's still interesting because you since you have some control over it, you can have like someone's going to be playing Vader, right? And so you try to pin the
Drop
list.
Mother Maul into him,
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
good to go.
But then there's
Like,
also
we
there's
got this.
also stuff like Ahsoka, and like there's different
Yeah.
plans that you could create kind of specifically for that. Um, and I think it's already like as soon as we were discussing it, I actually felt like the format would be better for Shatterpoint than it was for
Mhm.
MCP or for War Machine. Just like now, do you try to do a premiere format? Right now, my instinct would be no. I
So
think you
I
would
was
just
actually thinking about this while you were talking. Is
okay.
I was like, is this a premiere or is it standard? And the more I thought about it, I think it's 100% standard. I think there'd be way too many logistics and complications in place if you were to try to make this premiere, because now you have essentially you essentially have 10-man squads at that, or 10-man teams at that point, because you're having
Yeah,
essentially
you're blocking off a
10
lot of
lists.
stuff, and it gets really awkward, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to restrict primaries, um, which I think is the most fair way to do it, you would end up in a spot where like after you use up kind of the 10 best primaries, you'd have to then use up another 10 primaries, and then it's like,
Yeah.
is that stuff like is it actually going to be that impactful to even worry about those? Like how often is that going to come up? Wouldn't most of the time people are going to kind of play the best two primary combination that they could end up making? And I really think that like because of the nature of Shatterpoint terrain, I my instinct is that I would almost care more about choosing tables than I would about choosing the
Mm.
matchup, right? And then there's also think about it like you're like, oh, separatists are really strong, right? Like all the droids, right? But if there's intentionally tables that are not as good for droids, and you have like a 2 out of 5 or 3 out of 5 chance of like your opponent specifically choosing a table, that can be rough for the larger bases. I mean, it just feels like there would be so many levels to that it would just be really exciting. And if there's a community out there that has 10 really active players, I would really be interested to hear like if you guys had a game night and you just like made 5-person teams and then you just tried this out, right? Just
Hmm.
restrict primaries on the team, set up 5 tables, do the pairing process. um and I guess I'll give a little brief idea of what the pairing process is like. So let's say that Dyzard is the captain of a team and I'm captain of a team, and then like I win priority, so I get to choose whether I'm putting a player down first or if Dyzard has to put down a player first. And so let's say that I make Dyzard do it, and so he chooses one of the dudes from his team. Let's say it's Chris, recent Patreon and now best friend. He puts Chris down, and then I would take 2 players from my team and I would present their lists to Dyzard, and then Dyzard would then choose which of those 2 people are going to face his player. And then so if he chooses A, player is going to play against Chris, then the B player stays on the table, and then Dyzard presents 2 of his teammates. Maybe one's himself and one's Sam, right? And he puts those 2 down, and then I would decide who of those 2 is facing off against that player B. And then you kind of just go down the cycle. And so obviously one team gets to kind of choose 3 of the matchups. But whenever you don't get to choose the
Hmm.
matchup, you get to choose the table. Um, and so to kind of balance things out a little bit. And I think because say like an MCP, like the priority role of like who's going first is so impactful to the game because it affects the layout. And right now, like obviously we have 2 struggle packs for Shatterpoint, and then maybe we would have a third by the time that a WTC would roll around. But it doesn't feel like,
Mhm.
and maybe I'll my opinion on this will shift over time, but right now that doesn't feel like it's going to drastically change who's advantaged and who's not advantaged as to which of the struggle packs you're playing on. They still kind of fundamentally present like a similar game situation, that might slightly improve the, the quality of like a very specific model. Um, like yeah, I it's hard to say at the moment, but
I so I had an idea
okay.
while you were talking earlier because I was thinking like, how would missions work with this, or struggles rather, and I don't know why, but it just popped in my head like, how cool would it be if we're gonna be getting more and more of these mission packs, if like it was just randomly drawn. Like round one, we're doing shifting priorities. Round two, shifting priorities. Round three, the whatever it's called, the Hondo one. Like having, and then maybe the third mission, whatever that's out by then, and not having it be dictated by the players' lists as it is in the rules, but just being like you're gonna have the whole this round, everybody's playing shifting priorities, and
I
just have
think
it be random. Nobody knows what round it's gonna be.
I think the only complication that you would have in that is that,
Map cards.
yeah, well, because you could have two players, like it could be, Bob and John are playing against each other, and neither of them have the anything but the core set pack, right? And
Yeah.
so you would to a certain extent have to provide those cards, but I mean that's not a, when you think about it, and like most stores need like chess clocks for every table, like the need to have some of these
Cards.
struggle cards is certainly not the end of the world. I wouldn't be opposed to playing in it. I don't know yet how much these struggle packs affect who is advantaged and who is not.
Oh man, have you played the new one yet?
I have not played the new one yet.
Okay, so when you're able to get your hands on it and play it, um, I think separatists are gonna have a hard time on the new one.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I want to pick it up. I think it came out on Friday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just haven't had a chance to swing into Mox since then, but yeah, I'm gonna grab it right away. I'm excited to try it out. I think it would be like, because you know how the layout is kind of, it's kind of that, octagon's not the
Stop
right
sign.
word. It's
Yeah.
okay, maybe it is octagon. But what I was thinking is like, can you
Ace
imagine
five.
one that was like the three in front of you, and then two in the middle, and then three in front of your opponent? Something that it maybe actually like favors gun lines a little bit more than the two that we
Mm-hmm.
have, right? Where you need more protection on your back line and less people in the middle. I don't know. I think if they ended up doing a struggle pack like that, that could be really, really interesting. I am happy that Shatterpoint is kind of slightly more melee focused than guns, because I keep talking about my early days with Wizards of the Coast Star Wars minis, and that game, lightsaber users were pretty much awful. There was like only a
Yeah.
handful of characters who were not awful in that game. It was all guns all the time, but yeah, it would be interesting. But yeah, I mean, I would totally, like, if I had the opportunity to play in something, or maybe like, I don't know if we would do it like at LVO or Adepticon, but I would totally be down if we just like had 10 people and we just like made two teams and like just made sure that everybody had different primaries, and then just like picked out 5 tables at the con or whatever and tried something like this out just to kind of like see what it's like, and then maybe like provide feedback. I don't know if it's a realistic possibility or not. It would be up to it would really be up to Gil, who's organizing the WTC. We did talk to him about it, and he seemed open to the idea. But obviously, organizing something for 2 games does get a whole lot more complicated. I will say that there was definitely space for it, right? Because it was um, we had both War Machine and MCP held at the same location, and there was this room where we all had lunch basically, and it was as large as the tournament room that we were playing in. And there was basically enough space to run 64 tables very comfortably in the first room. So I can just imagine, like, if you're not dedicating an entire con hall basically to lunch, um, we could easily run both game systems. But I don't know how much the game systems players overlap. I don't know if it would create issues where it would be becomes difficult to run both just because you have players doing both. But I don't know. Well, what? So Dyzard, kind of away from just the pure Shatterpoint, because obviously you're an MCP
Mhm.
player. Lots of your audience and stuff comes out to a thing like this. What are the chances that you would just go to WTC anyway?
It's on my bucket list, I guess you could say. I wanted to go this year, but this terrible timing
Yeah.
with me not knowing when I was getting out. So hopefully I can make it out next year. Because the wife would love to go to Denmark. Um, and even if it's for a nerd convention, she would love to go to Denmark.
You should
Um,
have her listen to the last episode of OP, because I end up just talking about
yeah,
Copenhagen a lot. And
yeah.
it's the first city that I visited where I've just like legitimately just really loved the city, more so than
Mhm.
any other place that I visited. Um, but I'm tentatively leaning towards. I don't want to do the format for MCP. I'm not going to go into the whys. You can listen to my MCP show if you want to know the whys of why it's probably not the right format for me as a content creator and such. But I really want to go back because it was an awesome experience. Whether it has Shatterpoint or not, I would absolutely consider playing on a Shatterpoint team. But I'm tentatively just planning to go, and I've already requested the time off for next year. We don't know the exact days, but I'm just guessing. Um, but my
Mhm.
intent is to go back as a content creator, even if I'm not playing in something. Um, I don't know exactly what I would do, whether I'm recording games, I'm doing live interviews, or what it would be exactly. But I absolutely want to go back. It was just awesome seeing everybody talking nerd stuff with people from all over the world. So it was
Yeah,
awesome. I think you would love it.
hearing all the WTC podcasts for MCP, I'm just hearing everybody talk. I was like, man, it's like one of those like I wish I could have been.
Yeah, you
But
should have.
it's something I hope to make it. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I think as far as Shatterpoint is concerned, I think it is a format that could work really well with Shatterpoint. And as far as like a point of WTC a lot of times is to remove a lot of game variance in your total outcome of winning or losing the tournament as a whole. And you're doing that by adding more people to the mix to sway that variance in a way.
Yeah,
Um, and I think one of the biggest complaints I hear about Shatterpoint is, "Oh, I got screwed on the struggle, and I lost the game." Well, I think that's why Shatterpoint would actually make an excellent like team format type of game is because it's potentially removing the potential of that aspect for your team to make number one.
yeah. I mean, if obviously, like I'm pretty I'm fairly adamant against like this because this comes up with Shatterpoint and MCP where people feel like the stuff is too dicey, and like certainly there are games where you lose because of the variance. Like there are just we are playing a game with variance, so we're not playing chess, so sometimes the deciding
Yeah.
factor will be dice in some way, shape, or form. But I feel like, at least for me, the number of games that I truly feel like are decided by dice is a very, very small number. Like
Hmm.
it is, and I mean this is beating a dead horse, but it's all about your ability to adapt to the situation, and you absolutely can
Absolutely.
argue that when you need characters that can adapt to that randomness, right? It does push a certain amount of characters out, and why characters like Django and OB2 and such with like extreme mobility options to just totally cross a board when you need them to, like that sort of thing becomes super valuable, and you kind of do get more punished when you veer away from those characters that don't have as much of that mobility and that much of the option, or the dependability and pushes and stuff. It is what kind of pushes characters to the top. And I can understand how someone is like, man, I'm really trying to like make Cody work, and then you feel the variance so much more. right? Like whenever you're trying to make something work that doesn't seem to adapt well to the variability, you're going to run into issues. But overall, I don't think the variability, the variance, dictates that much. But it's always nice when you're playing in a team event, right? And you're like, I did get fucked. Like literally, every single double score roll was like on that back point where he had all of his stuff, and then the double score was always where he wanted to go attack anyway. It favored him, and I just couldn't bust through that. Like that is a possibility, but then you're like, that's fine as long as the rest of my team didn't get fucked. you know.
I got Mother too. She covers my ass on everything, so it's fine. But I do think this just makes me want to hit this real quick, and I do think that's like one of the biggest things I love about Shatterpoint is the characters are designed to be extremely adaptable, and like this is where the whole MCP versus Shatterpoint thing comes into play. Is I love MCP for a very strategic, planned out game, and dice happen, but you're kind of like committed to your plan. There's very little
I politely disagree.
thinking on your feet adaptability. It's compared to Shatterpoint. Compared to Shatterpoint, you do have to think on your feet and be adaptable. Yes, I'm not going to say you don't. That's insane. But like, I just feel like the core of Shatterpoint is designed around being tactical and adaptable, where the core of MCP is designed around being strategic and planning.
I think you're going to lose people in that definition. I get what you're trying to say.
That's fine.
I think, and I mean, I don't think we need to derail into comparing the two, but fundamentally, they're just both miniatures games that are based around adaptability. And I think Shatterpoint does
and an
take
IP.
that. Yes, they're a cool IP, and it's all about adaptability. And I do think that that Shatterpoint takes that up a notch and requires even more adaptability than MCP, but I don't think it's actually by that much because of the days mechanics and things like that. Like you do have to plan things out a little bit more in MCP for sure, but I just like the adaptability in general, so that's why I end up enjoying these games so much. And I just love in Shatterpoint. I did end up with a lot of conversations while over in Denmark with people who like respected me as an MCP player and were asking me questions about Shatterpoint. They're like, "Oh, I bought the core set, but I haven't played," or "I've played like one game and like I'm just curious, like how much should I get into it?" And so I'm like talking to them about it, right? And it's just like, okay, well, turn 0 doesn't matter that much, right? Like there's just not that much turn 0 for Shatterpoint.
What turn 0?
Yeah, and so, but
I'm lined up. I'm on my point. I'm good to go.
Yeah,
there we go.
But it is just Shatterpoint is just all about your in-game decisions and your in-game adaptability. It's just like, let's get to playing the game. Do you understand basic deployment? Have you built a reasonable roster? And then it's just like, let's play it out and see who makes better decisions. And it's just like, it's nonstop interesting decision making from the moment you start playing.
Yep. And that's what I love about it. Yeah. I'm super excited to get to Washington though, because my dad's always sending me the pictures of the ones he's painted up recently, and I'm like, I haven't played a game with my dad in years. So he has really looking forward to that. Yeah, he's got Shatterpoint. He's a big Star Wars fan, so he like MCP. I tried to get him into MCP, and he bought some of the stuff because he wanted to paint it up, and he just bought stuff he wanted to paint. And I'm pretty sure for Shatterpoint, he's just gotten everything so far. And he keeps sending me pictures. Like the other day, he sent me like Kraken, and I'm like, wow, it looks really good.
But there was this fun moment in Denmark where I had hopped on the metro to go back into downtown Copenhagen to go meet Amon from Hello There for beers because he was staying downtown. And while I was walking to where they were drinking, I was walking and I see costumes on this like wall windows of this building. And so in my head, I'm just thinking, oh, this is a costume shop over here. That's kind of cool. And as I get closer, their front door is open. And then the first thing I see is the Shatterpoint core set. Just that box, literally like you would walk up 3 stairs and then the first display is right there. And then I went up and I like walked through it the next day because I went went back. I didn't have time because I was trying to meet people. But it was like the most like basing and brushes and paints that I'd ever seen in a store in my lifetime. This place was called Pharaoh's Cigars. It's based off like an old comic book. But super cool. They had like this miniature game area downstairs where you could like play games. It mostly saw people playing Magic, but they had some terrain and such. But they had like a mostly painted up Shatterpoint core set. It was super cool, but I didn't realize until a couple days later when I was back exploring that Pharaoh's Cigars is a game store, but also a LARPing and costuming store. And what they had basically done
Wow.
is like on a particular block, they had like 4 different buildings. None of them were connected, but there was like Pharaoh's Cigars, the D&D store. Then there was Pharaoh's Cigars, like the LARPing store. And then there was Pharaoh's Cigars, like the normal costuming store. And then there's Pharaoh's Cigars, the minis game store. And it was so cool. It's just like, it was a whole block that was half of it was like this one gaming store just doing all the nerd stuff. I just thought it was so cool.
That's awesome. Well, do you have anything for addressing the council?
I don't think so for this one, but I could close one out. So on the topic of the WTC format, who do you think? So who do you think is like the kind of closet great primary who would work in the format? That may not be the obviously like you imagine Vader would be on most teams. Who's like the primary that would be less obvious but would end up being really fucking good in that format?
I hope Kenny does not listen to this.
Okay.
Anakin.
And I could see that, right? Because you know that someone's going to have Vader, right? And so having someone else play Anakin could be super strong. I'm going to give a shout out to my girl Asajj in this format, where I think
that's fair. She's not underrated at all, though. She's going to be everywhere. Like
probably, but I do often see people think that she's not very good. But I just mean that like with some element of getting to choose from 5 tables, I think Asajj, you could like, if you were just like a real master of her, I think when you start looking at the terrain layouts and stuff and you're just like, oh my God, pushing is so abusive on this table. And maybe on the same front, you could say like Plo Koon and stuff as well, where you could, when you're playing a push list and you're just like, this table is set up for the god of all pushes, you know? We're getting to the end and I'm got to do the closing, right?
You sure do. You got this.
All right. Well, I'm going to say the most Star Wars thing that you could do is travel to an international Shatterpoint event and play it in your Sith robes. Later, nerds.
Fair enough.
What? You don't like my outro? You'd be great.
No,
in Sith
I just
robes.
imagine a bunch of people. I just imagine a bunch of people showing up to play Shatterpoint in Sith robes now.
Dude, a whole team, that would be so sweet. Cool Sith
That would
robes.
be pretty cool. Have your jersey be Sith robes. Like have the embroidery on the Sith robe.
Oh my God. Can you imagine like everybody's got like a Sith robe and then it has your team logo on the back?
Yeah, and then you got lightsabers too. Like you have to. Like it's so much easier to do that than it is to like cosplay MCP stuff for everybody on the team.
Yeah, Star Wars is way easier to dress, but all right. Well, let's see. We're still streaming. Let me stop the recording. We can hang out for a minute and the twitchiness still.
So I have something for you, and I keep spacing on this. So you know, forever ago, how we talked about Morgan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how you're like, man, I wonder what he's up to. He won the first TTS for Shatterpoint.
You think I don't know that? I mean, mind you, I've known he was playing.
You've been gone doing stuff. Okay, I don't know what you know and don't know.
Yeah, I have not listened to the Hello
There
episode yet, but Trust me,
It's
Amon
good.
was
It's
talking
actually really
about
good.
losing to Morgan while we were
Yeah.
in Denmark.
No, the Hello There episode of Morgan's really good.
Oh,
Can't recommend that. I love hearing Morgan talk on about like what he's thinking about games and stuff like that. Like, he's just got a
Yeah.
good head for gaming. So
just a rock star level dude in general. So
absolutely.
all right, stream. Well, we want to thank you all for hanging out with us. Shiny Agron, thanks for being a part. Was this I think probably your first stream? Because I think it said your first thing was your first time chatting with us. And he clearly plays Mother, so we like him already.
Yeah, mother love everyone. I was playing a game earlier, right? And I was like, and Mama goes, and Victoria's over on the couch, and she's just laughing because I just kept calling Mother Mama.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
Mama's gonna whoop some ass.
You're a good man. All right. Well, we're ending the stream. Later, nerds.
Yeah.